All right, guys, welcome to Shri Shri with Shami, and here we are at the Library of Congress. And by the way, Shri Shri with Shami is all about life in small doses, and especially Desi life in small doses. Like I said, we are here at the Library of Congress. This is the world's largest library. It has over 167 million books, films, photographs, manuscripts, maps. I'm particularly excited to see what kind of manuscripts they have. Before we go in, actually, I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit of history about this building. So this was set up in 1800, and about 15 years later, there was a fire, and the whole thing got burnt down. And so at that time, Thomas Jefferson, who was such an influential figure in American politics, he stepped in. And if you remember, in one of our previous videos, I talked about us going to law school at UVA, the University of Virginia, which is actually founded by Thomas Jefferson. So you see his impact all around. So when the fire happened here, he had a large collection of books. So he sold about 6,000 of his books to the Library of Congress, to the Library of Congress. And there's another little interesting tidbit. If you actually see across the street, that is the U.S. Capitol building. That's where our senators and House of Representatives meet. And if I were to compare it to in Indian terms, it's like Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, that's where they meet. And all the research that's required by our House of Representatives and Senators, that's handled by a special research arm at the Library of Congress. So it's going to be really exciting. So let's go and check it out.
So as you enter the building, you see this beautiful architecture, gorgeous paintings on the ceilings, and then you walk into a maps exhibit. Some of the maps that are here are from the 1700s and 1800s, and this particular exhibit had maps of various states as they existed at that time. There was a map of Oregon, of Colorado, as the early settlers were exploring the West. We then walk into the photography exhibit that includes images from the 14 million photographs that are held by the Library of Congress. These are images of iconic moments, of people. Some of them are thought-provoking, and some of them are plain funny and absurd, like this one. This particular photograph really caught my attention. It's called The Migrant Mother and became the iconic image of the Depression era. It was captured by a very famous photographer called Dorothea Lange. Okay, now we are entering the Jefferson Library collection. If you remember, earlier I told you how in 1815, when the Library of Congress burned down, Thomas Jefferson, who's a huge book aficionado, he in fact says, I cannot live without books. Right? I mean, he had a huge collection. At the time, he was, I think, going through his own financial crisis and he wanted money. So he offered to sell his set of books to the Library of Congress. After much controversy, I think they managed to buy around 6,000 books for about $24,000. And this is around 1815. So it's quite a fortune, a big amount of fortune for Thomas Jefferson. So after a while, I think 1850s, I think there was another fire. And some of those books, again, a portion of those books also got lost. This collection had books on politics, on British monarchs, on chemistry, botany, human anatomy, and so much more. This is the main reading room of the Library of Congress. This is what everybody comes here to see. In fact, if you look beyond those columns, Those books that you see there, those are the treasured collections that are housed here, and you need a special permit to come and check them out. A bit more information about the dome. You see the paintings right there. These are supposed to represent the 12 regions that were contributing to Western civilization at that time. I could see Italy, Islam, not really like countries like we think of right now. And if you come down a little further, you can see these statues. There were several statues and they represented the various subjects like art, commerce, history, law, philosophy, poetry, religion, and of course science. And right below that, you see those brown statues. They are supposed to represent the most influential men of that time. Some of them were like Plato, Homer, Moses, Sir Isaac Newton. Of course, there was no female representation at that time. But then we're talking about our history.
Alright guys, that was a tour of the US Library of Congress, the world's largest library. I come back from the tour with like in awe, for the kind of preservation, the kind of money, the kind of thought that's gone behind preserving these, books as treasures. And I'm in awe of Thomas Jefferson. We've visited him, his house. It's called Monticello in Charlottesville. But I have a newfound respect for Thomas Jefferson. His voracious appetite for reading. I mean, can you imagine? He had interest in everything from obviously politics and history to astronomy to microscopes to botany. That man was quite something. I would have loved to meet him, of course. But all said and done, this is Shri Shri with Shami, life or Desi life in small doses. See you later.